first step is to mise en place all ingredients for the final dough as well as the pouliche and levain. The pouliche is made by mixing the flour, water, and instant yeast in a bowl. Pouliche is a 100% hydrated pre-ferment, which means that it is very wet and easy to mix, therefore it can be mixed by hand. Once the pouliche is fully mixed, it should be poured into a Cambro container. Be careful to aim the pouliche for the bottom of the Cambro, making sure that none of the pouliche sticks to the sides because it will dry out. Cover and label the Cambro and set aside to ferment for about 12 hours at room temperature, or 70 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit. The levain is made the same way as the pouliche. However, this pre-ferment is made with a sourdough culture rather than instant yeast. The use of this culture brings a new flavor profile to the bread. The flour, water, and starter are mixed in a bowl and poured into a Cambro the same way the pouliche was. Cover and label this Cambro as well and set aside to ferment for about 12 hours at room temperature, or 70 to 75 degrees. When the pre-ferments have fully fermented, scale out the remaining needed ingredients for the final dough: water at 90 degrees Fahrenheit, salt, and yeast. In a stationary mixer fitted with a dough hook, combine the flour, malt, water at 90 degrees, pouliche, and levain. Mix on first speed until all ingredients are fully incorporated. At this point, the gluten in the dough has not been fully developed. In order to develop the gluten and strengthen the dough, it needs to be covered and set aside for about 20 minutes. After the 20 minutes has passed, the dough should be able to be stretched thin without tearing significantly. The dough should now be moved to a spiral mixer and the salt and yeast can be added. The dough should be mixed on first speed until the salt and yeast have dissolved completely and the gluten is fully developed. Once the dough is done mixing, take the dough out of the mixer and put it into a plastic bin that has been sprayed down well with water. The dough now has to be organized. With water on your hands, gently pick up the south end of the dough and pull it up into the middle of the north side of the bin. Continue doing this until the dough is smooth on top and rectangular in shape. The dough then needs to be turned so that the long side of the dough is parallel to the long side of the bin. Take the temperature of the dough once it has been organized. It should be somewhere close to 78 degrees. The bin should then be covered, labeled, and set aside to ferment for 1 hour. Once 1 hour has passed, the dough needs to be folded. This folding process is the same as the one used to organize the dough when it was first taken out of the mixer and put into the bin. The dough should be pulled up from south to north 3 to 4 times. Once the dough has been reorganized, it should be turned so that the long side of the dough is parallel to the long side of the bin. Cover the bin and continue to ferment for another hour. After the dough has been able to ferment for 2 hours total, it needs to be divided and pre-shaped. On a well-floured bench, flip the bin over and gently help the dough out onto the table in one piece. It is okay if there are some remnants stuck to the bin. Those can be scraped off and added to the dough before it is divided up. Stretch the dough from north to south so that the dough is approximately the width of 2 bench scrapers. Then, gently stretch the dough lengthwise until the whole mass of dough is even in thickness. Use a bench scraper to mark the dough equally so that there's a guide for cutting. When the dough has been marked, use a bench scraper to divide the dough into 2 long strips. From that point, using the long edge of the bench scraper again to measure out approximately 380-gram rectangular pieces of dough. If there is too much or too little dough on the scale, adjust until the piece is weighed out to 380 grams. The goal is to be as close to the weight as possible with just one cut. If too many pieces of dough are added, it can change the characteristics of the final product. Lay each 380-gram piece of dough with the short side facing your torso. Gently pat the dough to degas it a little, but do not be too aggressive with it. Making sure all sides are even, pick the dough up on the north side and fold the edge down a little past the midpoint of the dough, pushing in just enough to keep the dough from unfolding. Repeat this fold one more time so that the dough looks like a log. Place the pre-shaped dough seam down on a lightly floured breadboard. Place the breadboards into a covered rack that has been well sprayed with water. The dough needs to rest at room temperature for 20 minutes. Remove the breadboards from the rack one at a time and place at the workstation. Take one piece of dough and place it seam up horizontally in a small strip of flour on the table. Note the rest of the table should have just enough flour on it that the dough does not stick. Bring the dough closer to your torso and gently pat down to degas it so it is an even thickness throughout. Take the right north corner and bring it down to the middle of the dough. Use the soft part of the palm and heel of your hand to gently tuck and secure the fold all the way along the dough. Pick the dough up, stretch it out a bit, and rotate it 180 degrees. Repeat the fold, bringing up the north right corner to the middle of the dough. Use the same technique to secure the fold. Gently lift and stretch the dough again. Starting at the top right corner, fold the dough down to the bottom right corner while using your thumb to push the middle of the dough in. Use the same hand technique to secure the dough at the bottom. Turning the dough so that the seam is up in a straight line, begin to roll out the dough. Turning the dough so that the seam is up in a straight line, begin to roll out the dough. While rolling out a baguette, you want one foot a little in front of the other, and you are going to start with your hands on top of one another. Using even pressure, begin to rock back and forth on your feet and move your hands outwards towards the edge of the dough until the dough is even in thickness and round. Find the seam again and make sure it is face up. Move the dough onto lightly floured couche-lined breadboards. When the baguette is put down, make sure the seam is up and it runs evenly along the top of the baguette. Fold the long edge of the couche up so that there is a small wall between the baguettes. Once 6 baguettes are on a breadboard, use the extra couche fabric to lay on top. Put the breadboards back into the well-sprayed covered rack and make sure to zip shut. Let the dough rest for 50 to 60 minutes. Pull the long edge of the couche out and flip the baguette onto a paddle. Then use the paddle to slide the baguette onto the loaders. Each baguette should be given plenty of space to bake without sticking to one another. When scoring a baguette, you want to hold the razor at a 45-degree angle and start from the center tip at the north end of the baguette. Each score should be approximately 4 inches in length, and there should be 5 to 6 scores per baguette. When making each cut, use your left hand to guide the left side of the dough to keep it from moving. Each cut should be done quickly and with confidence. Any hesitations will result in poor scoring. Once all the baguettes are loaded and scored, they need to be baked. Slide the end of the loader into a deck oven and make sure the loader is hooked in. Quickly pull the loader out of the oven so that the baguettes are now on the stone. Moving too slowly can result in baguettes rolling over and losing their shape, so it is important to move quickly and with confidence. The oven should be set with the steam at 0.25. The upper temperature should be set at 480 degrees Fahrenheit, and the bottom temperature should be set at 440 degrees Fahrenheit. Start by baking the baguettes for 20 minutes. Once the timer has gone off, set the steam at 0 and continue to bake until every baguette is deep golden brown and has a strong crust formed. Some may be done before others, and some may need to be moved around in the oven so they can get a more even bake. When the baguettes are done, move them onto a wire rolling rack and let them cool.